Hi, I'm Dr. Neel Shah, and welcome to the DBT podcast. Welcome to the DBT podcast. I'm Dr. Neel Shah, a hematologist oncologist, just trying to get facts into the world. This podcast is not sponsored by anybody, and today I have a very good friend of mine, a top pediatrician in Michigan, great state of Michigan, where there was victory on Sunday by many teams, and someone I went to med school with, Dr. Zoy Patouhas. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart.
Well, I know you take care of thousands of kids in the state of Michigan, and there's a lot. I see a pediatrician here, but if he's listening to this, I do cheat by texting you every time one of my kids is sick. So, it's really a tough job, I think, and an underappreciated job, quite frankly, in many ways, to take care of kids. We all take our kids to, the doctor every year, a pediatrician, and I know it's not just developing a relationship with the kid, but with the parent. And, unlike adults where, we're telling them, giving them, some advice to, change their lifestyles, which I know you guys do, of course, as well. But I think a lot of the things that we've learned about taking care of kids is preventative. And we're trying to move that way in adults. And I think one of the things that we do is, like, my kids have gotten all their their vaccinated shots. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about, why we do that, in a very basic level, how it was discovered that we do that, and how it helps yourself and everybody else.
Yeah. So in general, when we talk about pediatrics, you're right. A lot is what we call anticipatory guidance. We see how kids are doing, how they're developing. We give parents guidance as to what to expect in the future. We anticipate what's going to happen. And some of that is preventative care. And if there's an age group where vaccines are vital, it's the pediatric world. And so we're talking everything from birth to 18 years of age. Vaccines are so important for health. And it's not just for the individual child. It really is a community public health situation when it comes to vaccines. So when it comes to children, every parent, what they care about the most is their kids. Their lives change when the kids come into the picture. And there's a lot of love, but there's also a lot of fear. They want to keep their kids healthy. And so that begins with a healthy lifestyle, but also with vaccines to help boost their immune system. So the way we fight off diseases is with our immune system. Whether we naturally get a disease, are exposed to it, fight through it, and then our immune system creates these antibodies, kind of the warriors of our body, to remember that disease in the future. If we're faced with it again, we can protect ourselves, either not get it again or get it mild. Now, the problem with natural immunity is there are many diseases where by getting them naturally and making your natural immunity, you can get seriously ill. You can have permanent complications. And some of these diseases actually can cause death. So there's really no purpose in getting natural immunity if you're not going to survive. So this is where vaccines come into play. They give your body a small particle of the disease, whether it's a protein or part of the surface, some small particle that is safe for your body to be exposed to. You won't get the disease, but it activates that immune system, that warrior of your body. It recognizes that as foreign and actually not just foreign, but potentially damaging to your body. And then it makes the antibodies. So you have protection without ever actually having to fight the disease. And so it has just been, honestly, a medical marvel that we have this science where we can get immunity without having to get the disease naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember when my mom was growing up, she had a couple sisters that passed away in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think the incidence of childhood death used to be a lot higher from infectious diseases, and it used to be the number one cause of death. Am I wrong about that, or is that
No,
accurate?
no, you are very accurate. I mean, honestly, next to clean water, vaccines really have made the biggest impact in the medical community for saving lives. That is how important vaccines are.
Right, because the cause of childhood death, the number one cause used to be an infectious disease, and it's clear
Hmm.
it's not anymore.
It's not
And
anymore.
and the
Mm-mm.
only reason for that, just to be clear, is vaccines. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then you mentioned some chronic issue. You could get, okay, you may say, okay, well, nowadays people don't die from this, but they could get a chronic complication, something like
Hmm.
polio. Is that right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
people
Mhm.
used to get polio, and then they'd have chronic medical problems. Is
Oh
that
yeah, they
correct?
could survive, but then you would be weak. You would not be able to walk. You'd have permanent muscle issues. And so polio used to be very feared because people would see it. And I think that's sometimes the issue with our vaccines. They've been too good. So some of these diseases people just haven't seen anymore. And so they forget really how scary they are. And so, as you mentioned, even with your own family, having witnessed death and disease, they're fresh in the minds of many of us. And in the medical field, we remember, we know, we've studied, and you don't want to get natural immunity from a lot of these diseases. And the sequelae, like you mentioned, for example, growing up, we all got chickenpox, and it
Yep.
was just a common thing.
I
You
got
grew
it.
up, it was
Yep.
miserable,
Yep.
miserable. But even when we were growing up, 100 to 200 children a year would die of chickenpox. It can infiltrate your brain, causing something called encephalitis. And then for you and I, in our generation, we have natural immunity. But what that means is that virus is still alive in our ganglion cells and can reactivate in something called shingles, which, if anyone knows shingles, it is extremely
Oh
painful and
yeah.
dangerous. Whereas now, the kids getting the vaccine, they have immunity without that virus living in them anymore. So now they're not going to get shingles. Whereas you and I, as we get older, will get a shingles vaccine to protect us from that awful disease.
I mean, it's just crazy to think about. I kind of hate the word natural in the sense that, like, human beings, and I've said this on this podcast already many times, we weren't living to 80 years old. Like this
Correct.
idea that, if I just stay quote unquote natural, everything will be great and I'll live till I'm 100 is just so false that I can't even. And it's prevalent in my community, in the Indian community. A lot of people are afraid to go to doctors. There's just a lot of kind of fear. And I mean, I understand it. Everyone doesn't want to, let's just talk about the risk of vaccines now. Okay. Because in my mind, there's a risk to everything. Like today, after this, I'm actually driving to Indiana to the hospital, and then I have a clinic in the afternoon, and I'm going to see patients. On my drive there, which is a risk, there's, I think, a 1 in 1 million chance I could get hit by a car and die. So there's a risk to everything that we do. And so maybe you can talk about, so we talked about the good things for vaccines. Maybe we can just talk about what does the data show? Forget about what people put online, because I think,
Hmm. Hmm.
we're not here to talk about that really. I mean, anyone can say anything. It's their right. We have free speech, which is perfectly fine. But, on this podcast, you're a professional, I'm a professional. Like, we're talking about what does the data show? So what about the actual risks for getting these vaccines? Can you talk about that? I mean,
So
obviously we have
there's
some people that are not doctors saying that vaccines cause autism, for example. Okay. And I haven't seen any scientific data that's in any way accurate, but I love to hear. You're the expert, and so I want to hear from you.
So your only real quote risk with vaccines is really just when your immune system gets activated, you can spike a fever. You can feel fatigued. Sometimes you can feel like you're fighting off a mild version of illness. So, again, when children or adults get their vaccines, for those first 48 hours, you could have a temperature. You could have a fever. You could have some body aches. You could have some fatigue. That's about it when it comes to truly your problems with the vaccines. Now, like you said, people can put out any information they want. But when you look at actually medical risks of vaccines, it really is just that. The injection site could be sore, it could be a little bit red. And when your immune system activates, you could have fever, fatigue, body aches, for a couple days as that immune system is responding and creating protection for you. But, you brought up autism. That unfortunately really preys on the fear that parents have. We're talking back with Andrew Wakefield. So you bring up, autism. So, unfortunately, I do have to bring up Andrew
Sure.
Wakefield when it comes to that. So back in 1998, he published probably one of the worst articles ever written by a physician. It was an article that, in his mind, demonstrated there was a link between autism and the MMR vaccine in particular. It was published in the Lancet, and it was probably one of the most flawed studies ever put out there. It was a study with just 12 children.
Oh, geez.
And they were, so it's just, you're never going to
I
base
don't know the
any
specifics.
decisions
Yeah.
on, it was 12 children that he kind of hand selected that may have certain symptoms. And then he even did many unethical tests. He did colonoscopies, all just
Colonoscopies on kids?
Yes, because his theory was that there were GI changes that you could find in children that would demonstrate they're more likely to be autistic. And so, again, we're talking a very flawed study that has since been retracted. He's lost his medical license. There's just been many things that went wrong with that. However, once that was put out there, parents see more autism than they see some of these diseases. And so it really made parents fear something that they have seen. Most people have met a family that's dealing with autism. Most families have not met someone who's dealt with polio, who has died of
That makes
meningitis.
sense.
So as a result, that is now where fear came about, and then it spiraled. And it's one of those things, like I said, vaccines in a way were just too good. They did too good of a job and erased from the memory of many people how bad these diseases actually are. And now we have this autism fear that, again, is unfounded. There have been dozens of studies
Yeah.
since demonstrate with more than 12 children that are demonstrating there's no link
I
there.
mean, this is exactly what I talk about in cancer. It's not about, you don't want to wait until you get a cancer, heart disease, or a stroke. You want to prevent it. It's why I take a statin. I consider it the same way. I don't want to get polio. That's why I take the vaccine. I don't want to, so, I mean, I think this is very similar in that I think hopefully medicine is moving towards these types of things to prevent stuff from happening that we know about versus, but like you said, a lot of people would say, well, why would you take a medicine? It's unnatural. You could have a side effect. Something could happen. Well, anything can happen with anything, but the actual data is the data, and that's what we talk, as you said, what we talk about.
You could put a Band-Aid on and have a reaction to the adhesive. You know what I mean? It's not like you're never going to use a Band-Aid again. Like you said, anything can cause a problem.
Right.
Sometime.
Exactly.
But there's just such overwhelming data that supports the safety of vaccines.
Is that the number one misinformation thing that you see every day amongst parents that you want to debunk, what you just told us? Or is there,
Yes.
There's a lot of different things, but is that like the
Yes,
number one thing?
That would probably be the number one. And again, because it's preying on fear,
Yeah.
The next one would probably be people fear, going along lines as you and I were talking about being natural, people fear preservatives now. And this is also where you have to be careful the information you read, because there's no way to necessarily know if you're reading something true or not, because the internet is so vast. No one's policing that. So you really have to trust, your doctors when you talk to them. So the next big issue is preservatives. In a world where now everyone wants to be natural, they fear anything that's a quote preservative. And
I didn't know this. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, anything, if it's going to last more than a day, is going to have some form of preservative in it. That's just, how
That's
life
facts.
works. It is. You just can't preserve things more than a day without a preservative. Now, everything that is put in a vaccine was specifically chosen because you are already exposed to it or it's naturally occurring in our environment. So again, there's so much science behind everything that happens with a vaccine. Now, the difficulty is sometimes people will take one grain of truth and twist it online to become scary. So the myth, do you want your kids having heavy metals in their body? Because that's what's in vaccines. And of course, what's a parent going to say? No, I don't want heavy metals in my body. If you ask me, obviously I'm going to say, no, I don't want heavy metals. But that's not how vaccines work. The main preservatives in vaccine are a very small amount of aluminum. Aluminum was chosen because it's found naturally in our Earth's crust. It's even in our water. It's even in breast milk. But the amount of aluminum that's in all the vaccines from birth to 18 years of age is what you can find in 30 ounces of formula or breast milk, which we know children can consume in one day. And so it is such a small amount. And again, you're naturally exposed to it anyway. So that is why it was selected. It's also not digested in the gut. It's not sticking, because the other thing is, it's adhering to the brain, it's adhering to the gut. None of this is metabolized through the gut. None of this, is going to the brain. But again, you take one truth, there is aluminum in vaccines, and then you change it to everyone's getting heavy metal, this is dangerous. So again, that's where a truth can be switched into misinformation and incite fear.
This is why I'm doing this. I'm even though I've known you for, I don't know, 30 years.
Yes, yes, 30
I don't think
years.
we've ever talked science before, so I'm like, I'm learning so much right now. I didn't know a lot of this stuff, so it's great.
But yeah, I will
So
tell you another one is formaldehyde. Okay, so people fear formaldehyde. Formaldehyde's even found naturally in fruit, to be honest, which is there something more natural than fruit that grows on a tree? But you take all the vaccines from 0 to 18 years of age, it's like 1/8 of the formaldehyde that's in one pear. So again, this is where autism and preservatives, those are two big words that incite fear. And those are probably the two biggest things that I have to just give parents some confidence in what they're doing. And that's all parents want. They just want to feel that they're doing the right thing.
and they are when they see a pediatrician. I feel like, uh, gosh, I mean, for what you do, it's just very, very difficult, in terms of educating parents, because there's just so much stuff online about,
Hmm.
kids and things that, that doctors are doing to try and quote unquote harm them, by pushing anything. And I think that's another form of misinformation, that somehow we're recommending things because there's something in it for us. And
Hmm.
I just, as a, you're a mom, I'm a dad. I mean, like, we would never do that to any other kid. And we all have to trust someone, right? I mean,
Hmm.
for me, there's like, like you mentioned, there's an article with 12 patients that's completely been debunked. The doctor has lost his license, all of those things. And we have other articles with hundreds of thousands of people that have shown that really there is almost no risk to getting any of these childhood
Hmm.
vaccines. Is that correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. In fact, the numbers of people getting vaccinated has gone down, significantly down, to the point we're seeing some of these diseases that we shouldn't be seeing. And unfortunately, I should say unfortunately, but it is not demonstrating that vaccines cause autism, because the vaccines have gone down. Autism has not gone down.
I mean, obviously, in the public now, there's measles. I think there's an outbreak in Texas.
Oh, yeah,
It,
42 states have measles now.
oh,
That's something we should not be seeing.
yeah. And people die from measles, right? Kids die from
Yes.
measles, right?
Yes, kids die, adults die. If you survive, you can have permanent brain changes. You can even have, I mean, there was a child actually that just passed away a few weeks ago from subacute sclerosis. And it really, it changes everything about that brain chemistry. And it's an encephalitis you just never want to experience. There is no recovery, and there is no cure for measles. The only way that we can avoid measles is the vaccine. And again, like I said, 42 states now, we've had 3 children die. These are things that in the modern day we should not have. Measles is a disease that is very scary also because it winds up erasing some of your immune system's memory. So not only is it dangerous because you could die, but even when you survive, even let's say your brain is fine, even let's say you don't get the other complications, your immune system's memory that it has built up for other diseases starts to wane away too. So it really is a disease that really should not be present. And in the 80s, it was very close to being considered eliminated in the US, not worldwide. But we have seen those changes. And really, that article from Wakefield is what caused people to back off of the MMR vaccine.
Hmm.
And since then, we have wave upon wave of some breakthrough measles. It's in the unvaccinated populations. But what we have to remember with immunity and protection is we do have to rely on something called herd immunity. When you get your vaccine, you're not just protecting yourself, you are protecting the community as a whole. Because there are some people that their immune system will not respond.
That's what I was going to say next is, I have a lot of cancer patients,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's
and
exactly where I was
everyone in their
going.
family, my guess is every person in the United States knows someone that has had cancer or has cancer of some sort. Obviously, as I've discussed, there's over 200 different types of cancer. Or, I've talked to an allergist, immunologist. There, 1% of people in the United States have, an immune deficiency. Um, Other people have autoimmune diseases that decrease their immune system. So what you're really doing is helping your neighbor, that maybe you
Correct.
don't know. There's a chance they have something, or helping someone in your family,
Mhm.
protect them. Because even if you said, well, I'm not going to get the vaccine because, I read this, you know, whatever reason, it's scary, of course, but you're really, in a sense, you're exposing someone else to potentially being infected. Is that right?
It's so true because with herd immunity, depending on the vaccine, you might need anywhere from 80 to 85 to even 90% of the population vaccinated to protect everyone. And people might think, oh, that's no big deal. There's tons of people. We'll get 80%, we'll get 85 or 90. But exactly what you said, not everyone is able to even get a vaccine. Sometimes you're not old enough. Sometimes your immune system is not functioning anymore. Cancer, immunodeficiencies. Sometimes you may actually have an allergy to a component. Sometimes you are on other medications that interfere with your immune system also. And so it is actually very hard. We do need the people that are healthy enough, who are lucky to be healthy enough to get these vaccines. In a way, it's kind of a medical privilege if you have that body that can take the vaccine, that can mount an immune response. So it really is so important for those of us that can get vaccinated. It's your own protection, it's your family, and it really is for the whole community. You're so right.
I get my flu and COVID vaccine every year just to protect my patients because I know I'm seeing them.
Yes.
And even if I can prevent one person from going to the hospital, I just had someone in the hospital with terrible COVID, who's on cancer drugs. So I think, we want to protect each other, and could be someone you love. And so that's really, something that,
Mhm.
I don't think people think about as much. I mean, obviously we all think about ourselves, but, about our neighbors and the community in general, about trying to decrease the amount of infections. Because the bottom line is, like, I think traditionally we're like, hey, drink chicken soup and don't stay in the cold. That's going to protect you from infection. But all the data, all the science says that you can only get an infection from another person. You can't get it from thin air. If I lock myself in a room all winter, I won't get an infection. Is that correct?
Yes, to a point. Yeah, if you're completely isolated in a bubble, that's, really not possible for anyone to be
Right.
in
Well,
a
that's what I
bubble all the
mean.
time.
Yeah.
There's really, I will tell you, even in the heart of COVID lockdowns, we were still getting positive strep. So I will tell you, these diseases still find a way, so there's really no way to live in a bubble. So protect yourself and others the best you can.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's just that's not a possible thing. That's an unrealistic thing to be
Exactly.
not around other people, and we're social creatures. Definitely, you and I are. And we enjoy. Well, we are because we enjoy it. We like taking care of
Mhm.
patients. You obviously have a love for your profession and educating people and trying to stop kids from being sick. And obviously, another thing that at least we're struggling with at home for me is the kids on their screens, right? So, one question I get, and that I talk to you about, talk to other people about, is, when to get kids a phone. I haven't gotten my kids a phone. When to, how much screen time is too much. When we were growing up, me and people may not know this, but, me and your husband would hang out a lot, and we would just play outside. And we didn't
You
really
would walk
have
out of
the
your house and find each other.
That's right. That's right. And, we didn't have the option of just being engulfed in this iPad or iPhone, which I get engulfed too sometimes. So, I'm just wondering, how with like with kids, do you think like that's a problem? And are you seeing that as being a problem? And how are you defensing against it, I guess? In my mind, I think about it as like, if I'm trying to lose a few pounds, I'm not going to buy cookies and leave them on the table. I'm just going to get enticed to eat them. So I try to just take the iPads away from the kids during the week. I don't know if you think that's a good idea or what your thoughts are.
So, in general, each family is ultimately going to have to make the choice that's going to work for them. We can give our general recommendations, but obviously, each family, we can say, keep screen time less than this or this. And again, each family ultimately needs to see what works for them. Now, what we do know is screen time does affect emotions, attention, ability to cope with difficult situations. Social media, especially, that is where we've seen a significant increase in anxiety, depression, kids having issues with body image at a younger age. Again, there is a huge platform out there talking about holding off on phones until eighth grade, and there's a lot of health benefits to that. Now, I do have a lot of families who are like, well, I can't wait till eighth grade, for this reason, and this reason. So again, each family has to decide. But what I do talk about with my families is when the time comes that you have decided your child is getting a phone, that does not mean they get everything that comes with the phone. Okay. So just getting a phone doesn't mean you get every social media, that you can go to any sites. You can decide to gradually introduce them to screens. Okay. It doesn't, and definitely if there's one thing I would hold off until high school, it would be social media. And again, it's our recommendations. People, will do what works for them. But screen time overall, take breaks. Don't leave your kids on there more than a half hour at a time. And overall, studies show keeping screen time less than 2 hours a day is going to be your best for health. People think 2 hours is easy. However, it's not. There's screen time in school. You watch a show after. Kids find their way to YouTube all the time. So it may not even be the phone itself. It's just the access to screens is there. 2 hours goes very quickly. So definitely, it really is important to have that family plan. It's also important for us parents to demonstrate to our kids that we can get away from our screens, because us parents have a hard time too. It's so important now. The expectation is to be connected all the time to the schools, to the activities, to your work. But showing your child you can take a break. Don't have it at the dinner table. Don't have it right in front of you when you're out to eat with your kids. If you're watching their event, watch their event. It's one thing to take pictures, but some people really are always on their phones. And so the kids see that and model that behavior too. We do have to remember that things really have changed in the last 10 years. The accessibility of an iPad, a tablet, a phone, it just is more available. Like you said, growing up, we didn't have these things, but you really have to have a family plan and try to demonstrate it yourself too.
Yeah, I mean that's why I ask your husband to golf with me all the time. I want to get him away from the screens and make sure that he's not looking at the screens
He's
when I
off the
come to
radar.
Michigan.
He
He's
is
off the
not. It's so
radar.
funny. He's off the radar. No social media, nothing for
I
him.
mean,
But
it's fantastic. Honestly, it's fantastic. I mean, he's one of the happiest guys that I met.
that's for sure.
I'm sure it's all because of you. But the other thing I wanted to ask about is nutrition, and I have two other kind of topics. So, obviously, we all know eat your fruits, vegetables, nuts, and beans. There's a big push for protein now, I think, in general. I just want to know your thoughts on that for kids, in terms of the nutrition and then processed foods. Maybe you can comment on all of that. all those things.
So, and that's also going to be very individualized depending on your situation, your activities. But as a whole, one of the things I tell all my patients is all the colors of the rainbow. I don't mean the Skittles, I mean your fruits and vegetables. The more colors of the rainbow you can get in your body, the more variety of vitamins you are able to put in that body. And we always joke with the kids, they're like, well, what about blue? We just have blueberries. I'm like, I know, blue might be the toughest. But a lot of the other things, like if you don't like a tomato, but you can do a strawberry, I'll take it. If you don't like an orange pepper, but you'll do a cutie clementine little orange, I'll take it. The colors matter because you get a variety of vitamins and antioxidants. So that's going to be huge. Trying to get at least 5 to 6 fruits and veggies a day is also huge, no matter what your activity level is. That is a huge, huge thing for your body. And that's hard. People are like, oh, no big deal. But honestly, that's making sure every meal you're having one or two, and then your snack having one as well. So fruits and veggies are a lot harder than we think because, like you mentioned, the processed foods, everyone is so busy. So it's so much easier just to grab things that are ready made, bags of things, instead of you slicing up fruits, veggies, and having those. And also, kids can be picky on fruits and veggies if the temperature isn't as they like it. So it's like if you pack that as their lunch snack and they're like, well, now it got mushy and now it got squishy, and it's warm, it's not cold. So it is trickier than we think. But again, having those family plans, expectations with your kids. Protein is huge too. And a lot of times people will think protein means meat. And that's not the case. There are so many ways to get protein. Yes, there's meat, but there's eggs, there's fish, there's lentils, there's beans. Dairy is another huge one. So if you tolerate dairy, that's another way. Yogurt smoothies. You don't have to love milk, but you can like other versions. So there are many ways that you can find your family plan to get the nutrition you need. The other big thing is water. As a whole, most of us are not drinking enough water. And I will tell you that's one of the number one reasons, in addition to screen time, that I'm seeing a lot of headaches in kids. Screen time, not drinking enough water, and just stress. Believe it or not, there's stress at every age, and stomach aches too. So having water is very important.
So speaking of stress, and we've talked about how in adults how important it is, whether you do prayer, meditation, whatever it is that is individual for you. I think all that stuff's important, whether you pray or meditate. For kids, my parents tried to get me in the habit when I was a kid. It didn't really work until I was an adult, and then I realized just how important, and I try to get in meditation, 5 or 10 minutes a day when I can, but I need to make it a better habit. What about for kids? What do you think? Like, is there something that you recommend just to decrease their stress level? I know, those things have been proven scientifically to help with stress.
Mm-hmm. So, believe it or not, every age experiences stress. It's a very busy, fast paced world. So, even toddlers, having to go to their older siblings, activities 5 days a week and going here and there, every age experiences some level of stress. And stress for a child can affect every organ system, just like it can for adults. Like I said, the headaches, the stomach aches, sometimes their heart feels like it's beating faster. They can get body aches, they can feel tired. So, managing stress is important. Number one, the screen time. It's associated with stress. Getting off of a screen is huge for your body to decompress, and keeping screens away an hour or two before bedtime is one of the best things to settle your brain down and get good sleep. Good sleep helps us fight stress better. A healthy diet is one of the things. Water, like we said. Fresh air. There's so many things now that keep us running everywhere. We're driving here, we're driving there. But even 15 minutes of fresh air a day brings about a decreased stress level for children. And that's where recess is so important. That's why a lot of times we'll talk about, and teachers are so careful about this. They never want to take away recess to be like the punishment, because recess is so important to recharge that brain and to decompress stress. Running, fresh air, just moving, you walk the dog as a family. These are huge, important things. And then I talk about the five senses a lot in the office, because each of us experience the five senses in different ways. So some kids, just like adults, music is very soothing. So we talk with a lot of families about making a playlist that pumps them up in the morning for school, making a playlist that helps calm them down while they're brushing their teeth. The sense of touch is very important. So a lot of kids, they love a hug when they're stressed, or some of them need to squeeze a pillow when they're stressed. So you start to connect with your child and figure out, how do the five senses speak to them? A lot of specialists even say at bedtime, when stress can be at a peak, to have 5 or 6 pictures that bring your child happiness printed out, and to flip through them after you've done your whole routine, the teeth and the cuddle and reading a book. Flip through these 5 or 6 pictures right before lights out, maybe a few times. And often it really sets the brain up to be in a happier spot, a less stressful spot. And often you do have more restful and better dreams when you sleep. And that actually can go for teenagers too, looking at things that put them in a good spot. So again, the five senses really are a key to stress for many ages.
So you mentioned exercise, which of course, helps, I think, with stress. When is the age when you say it's okay to lift weights? I know there's been I remember when I was a kid, and maybe it's the reason I'm so short. There was, there was something written about, there's some data on, whether it's safe for kids to start lifting weights too early, in a sense that it may
Mhm.
stunt their growth. So I'm curious what the science says.
That is still a pretty controversial topic. You could look up on 5 different days and get kind of 5 different answers about that. Overall, what we do know is when the body is still growing and changing and those growth plates haven't fused, there really is not a necessity to do heavy weightlifting. Body weight exercises are going to be the healthiest for those age groups where you have not kind of finished growing. Now, again, there's caveats to all of this, but when you look at things, planks, just hanging from a bar, pull-ups, push-ups, all of these body weight activities, they are so healthy for every age. Even adults can do them. We don't necessarily have to do weights, depending again on your health, your knees, your back, things like that. So again, when you're still growing, it's always best to ask your doctor, or again, if you're working with a coach too. But overall, body weight's going to be best when your growth plates haven't fused. The other thing to consider too is each sport has sometimes their own caveats. So for example, a lot of times you'll have ankle weights, or you'll do wrist weights. Or for example, my nephew is an archer, and so they started working with wrist weights to help how heavy that bow is when you pull back. And so again, we're not talking about your bench pressing 100 pounds when you're just a young teen or an early adolescent, but we're talking very small weight that can help your training. But again, each person should check with their doctor, because again, their health might be different. Different people have heart issues, different people have, even children have back injuries. So I would always counsel people to check with their doctor. But it's, if you're not done growing, body weight's always going to be good.
Now, one special thing about having you here is that, everyone that I've interviewed on this podcast up to this point has been a Chicago Bears fan. And, I'm just
Oh,
so happy that maybe, that we have another Detroit Lions fan on. So
oh
I want to
yes.
hear at home, where I grew up, what was the atmosphere like when, on Sunday after the game? Was everyone just walking around smiling the whole time?
Oh, there was a lot of happiness. I think every single person, whether you were watching the game or not, knew what happened, because that was one we all tuned in for, and everyone's bleeding blue everywhere here. And so it was a little extra sweeter playing
Well,
Chicago.
when your coach leaves for someone else in the division, I think,
Yes, there's still a little hole in our heart for Ben Johnson. Yep,
yeah.
yep.
I mean, listen, he did a good job in Detroit, and
Yes, he did for many years.
I always find it, you know, comparing to medicine, for example, like I always find it funny that when a team that maybe hasn't been doing good for a long time, like the Lions, it's not like Dan Campbell. The first year they were 13-3. They were, I think, 3-13, 4-12 their first year with Dan Campbell, and the second year they were 1-6. So, like this idea that you're gonna like just like science, where it takes time to get the data, analyze the data, figure out what's best for people. For us, it took 4 years of medical school, seeing I think we learn as we go along, seeing these, thousands of patients, and now we're kind of in the prime of our careers. It took all that time, and people think in football, like, okay, we're going to get some new coaches and we're going to go 16-0. In Chicago, everyone was talking about that. And it takes time
It takes time.
learn. I mean, I'm not a football player. Your husband is a football player and coach, and I think you just don't go and just start winning. There's a lot of coaching, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of time it takes to become good. So I'm just trying to give some hope to most of my listeners are from Chicago. So hopefully after this they'll be from Michigan. You're popular over there as one of the top pediatricians there. So. So besides the misinformation that we already talked about there, can you give a prediction for the Lions? Do you think we're going to win the division and go to the playoffs this year? Or?
I hesitate to say anything out loud because at times I can be a little superstitious with sports, but I have a positive feeling. I don't want to officially say anything, but I'm really keeping myself positive.
Is there anything else that you wanted to say for anyone else listening out there besides, obviously, we're actually seeing our pediatrician next month to make sure that people take their kids to the pediatrician to get these preventative measures, to understand that, humans have evolved to the point where we cannot get diseases, where we can prevent these things. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that you're seeing out there or anything else that you want to say to the general public?
I think the biggest thing is keep the dialogue open with your pediatrician, because sometimes when people start to get nervous or fear the vaccines or the medicine or changes in general, they just don't go back to their doctor. And keeping the dialogue open is the best way to advance medicine for everyone. I even tell my patients, I would much rather you just ask me than worry about it and try to look it up in a place that might give you the misinformation. I'm happy to answer any questions. And, I even told them, like, I can't answer questions about heart surgery or what would be the best make and model of your next car. But when it comes to children's growth, development, and vaccines and preventative health, that's what pediatricians do, and we actually welcome the questions. We don't take offense to questions.
And we're not judgmental, right? I mean, I think, correct, like you said, you got to find a doctor or person that you trust. It's just like with anything, with your car, with the plumber, I told you my basement flooded mm-hmm. last month, and, you got to find people that you trust and at some point, you just have to trust that person versus mm-hmm. trusting stuff that you may read online.
And I do think what you said about you taking statins and what you do for your preventative health is so powerful. And I will tell you with pediatricians, they recommend and do vaccinate their own family, the nephews, the nieces, so I feel like that's a powerful statement too. If we didn't trust the science, we would not bring that science into our own homes.
When I think about prevention for adults, I've talked about it a lot, and now kids, we've talked about it, and I just think we can all live happier, healthier lives. Oh, one topic I didn't touch on, which I do want to touch on real quick, and it's not a controversial thing. I want to just state the facts. What's the number one cause of kids dying in the United States? Do you know what that is statistically right now?
Statistically, most age groups, because again, with kids, everything's broken down in age groups, and most age groups, it is actually motor vehicle accidents.
Okay. And then and what about gun violence? Are kids dying from because that's another major kind of topic.
Yeah. Yes. Unfortunately, yes, we have injuries and deaths from guns on the rise in many of the age groups now. So that is something we do talk about at a lot of the well visits too. Not picking up guns, not looking for that. Because again, different homes store things in different ways. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of, I think both of those things are tough, accidents that can happen. And hopefully we'll move past those at some point with technology. I always wonder why, we have an iPhone, Face ID, and so I don't know. Some of these things are just terrible, obviously. So, thank you, Dr. Patouhas, and I have a gift for you at Thanksgiving. So we'll meet then.
I look forward to seeing you again, my friend.
Bye, Zoe.
Take care. Bye-bye.